Hi, Carlin.
Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, go ahead.
Go, Brian.
Amesbury. I'm the principal at the elementary school. It's nice to meet you. I take it, I just logged in, but I take it you're kind of a senior that's going to be sitting in on board meetings? Neat.
Carlin is our student rep. And so at the point in the meeting when the student's report comes, if it's okay with you, Carlin, I'll ask you to tell us a little bit about yourself. Okay. So let's see. Emily, did you say hi yet?
Hi, Carlin. I'm Emily Bonadonna. I'm the principal at the primary school. I'm so glad that we have a student rep on to attend our board meetings. I wish I had the opportunity to do that in high school. So we appreciate and we value your opinion as a student. So thanks for being a part of our board meetings. Nice to meet you.
John?
Hi, Carlin. I think you know me. I'm Gabe's dad. Nice to see you. Hope you're a little more talkative here than at middle school, though.
And I'm sure you know Mrs. Logue, but I will just have her say a hello there. Okay, great. So Carlin, we have to wait. We have to wait till 6:30. Deb has to give us the thumbs up that we're allowed to start our meeting. So we'll just chat amongst ourselves for another minute or two, and then we'll be on.
Matt just joined us as well. I would have thought he would be on at 6:29 and 59 seconds, but he's kind of
Me too, but I heard bad sounds coming from the other room. So it probably is a relief to you to join us, Matt, and lead the game. Do you want to introduce yourself to Carlin Bjorling, who's our student rep, please?
Hi, Carlin. I'm Matt Fitch. I'm the Assistant Superintendent for Business. Thanks for joining us.
Great. And Carlin, you're good with introducing yourself when your turn comes on the agenda? Awesome. And we know you are really busy, that we only get the best and busiest students from the academy for this position. So you can always let us know, or even if you haven't let us know, after your report, you're certainly welcome to cut out of the meeting, whether it's via Zoom or in person. And if you have questions or things that you want to contribute to whatever discussion we're having, just put your hand up and I'm happy to call on you anytime too. And we usually just do it like that so that the discussion is sort of organized, loosely organized. Oh, Beth, there you are. Hey, Beth, I don't think you introduced yourself to Carlin Bjorling yet, did you?
I don't know if she heard you. Did
Beth?
Milton? I'm not sure if Milton did either. Did you, Milton? Sorry,
I did not.
Okay.
Oh, Milton, I'm so sorry. Milton, there you are.
Carlin and I go way back though, so she and my daughter have been friends for a while.
Oh, nice. You're amongst friends, Carlin. Beth, did you want to introduce yourself to Carlin before we go into open session here? You have to unmute yourself.
Hi, Carlin, Beth Thomas. And we've seen each other before a lot too.
Yeah, I don't think
we did
many of
hair
us
together.
Deb, are we good to start? Awesome. Okay, I will call the meeting to order and ask everyone to stand for the pledge, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Welcome, everybody. Thank you to everyone for being here. I think everyone heard this is not live streaming because there is a soccer game, but it is being recorded. And so we're thrilled to have our student rep with us tonight. I'll introduce her in just a minute, but I'll ask Jamie if you have any comments first.
I do, and I apologize for looking a little distracted. I'm trying to manage all the participants and just organize everything here. I don't believe we have John Palomini, so if anybody hears that he's trying to get in and is unable to get in, please let me know. Like I said, I'm managing multiple screens at once. And if you may notice as well, we have closed captioning. And so we just have a lot of things happening here. So some comments I would like to make. First would be just kind of a forum recap, real brief. So last Thursday night, Matt Schrage and myself did a forum and Vern Tenney, sorry, I'm distracted by the closed captioning. We did a community and staff and student forum and just shared a variety of things that we felt like they needed to know. Kind of talked about how things are going up until this point. We had about 140 people attending it until we started the presentation, and at that time I really can't see the participants easily. So it was at least at that number, maybe a little bit higher. But we thank people for all their diligence with all of our safety protocol, wearing the masks and all of those different things. Oh, here comes John now. I'm going to let him in. Then we talked about what was next. And so really what's next is to look at our current status, survey our students, our staff, our parents to see what's going well and what ideas might they have. So we actually worked on that survey today. We think we'll release it right around Thursday of this week to really garner some information from folks. And then we'll take that information and investigate different options for semester 2. And so what could semester 2 look like? Maybe it's the same or maybe it's different. And what can we learn from others and from that survey? And then we need to provide clarity for what semester 2 looks like, and then people can make their choices again for semester 2. And so we talked a bit about that. We also talked about Governor Cuomo's Cluster Action Initiative, which is really a color-coded system where if there's a hot spot of infection rate, you're designated as a red area, and then right next to the red area is the warning zone. That's an orange area, and then outside of the warning orange zone is a yellow area, and they call that a precautionary zone. And so I actually asked our local leaders this past Friday, what does all that even mean? How do they designate? Is it based on percentages of infections? What is it? And they don't know. They've actually asked the governor's office and haven't received an answer. What designates someone a hotspot? I also asked, are universities and colleges included? Because, for example, let's just say Cuca had an outbreak. Well, they're pretty isolated. You know, they're usually maintained on campus. And so would that impact us or not? And we don't have an answer to that either yet. But what it really boils down to is if you're designated red or orange, you have to shut down school. So we would be forced to shut down if we were designated red or orange. If we were designated yellow, we have to do mandatory pool testing of 20% of our population, in-person population every week. And if we don't do that, the governor will withhold our state funding. He signed that executive order last week. And so if we're designated yellow, what I'm to do is reach out to our local Department of Health, and they will send us the saliva COVID test. And that's what we would have to administer to 20% of our in-person population every week. And so we just kind of talk people through that. It's important information they absolutely need to know. We also talked about what if we're forced to close? What if we're forced to close less than 2 weeks, 2 weeks or less, or more than 2 weeks? What would instruction look like if I selected in person versus virtual? And so essentially, if it's 2 weeks or less and we're shut down and you are virtual learning, nothing will change for those 2 weeks. Your learning will happen synchronously daily, just like it always has. If you're in person or hybrid for those 2 weeks or less, it will be all asynchronous instruction, knowing that all these families are thrust into a situation. They're probably trying to figure out, how am I going to arrange childcare? How can I coordinate all of this? And so the instruction will be done so that kids and families can do it when works for them each day in that first 2 weeks. But if it's greater than 2 weeks, what will happen is the virtual group and the in-person group, what their learning delivery model will be aligned. So what will be expected is 2 synchronous learning opportunities a week, Tuesdays and Fridays, 1 office hours per week, Wednesdays, and then 3 asynchronous lessons per week, Monday, Wednesday, Thursday, and it would be completely aligned with one another. We did have some questions about that. I know there was also an email to the board and myself specific to that. You saw my response. I was very transparent and honest with why that model is what it is. And I don't know any other way around it. I think we're making the best of a tough situation. But we were able to explain that, and we answered that question live as well. We also went into explaining, what does it mean? How do you return to learn? How do you return to work if you have been exposed and have gone to quarantine, if you have symptoms, if you have COVID? Vern did a great job going into a lot of details with that, very, very specific and descriptive. And then Matt really talked a lot about instruction and what are we working on currently in relation to professional learning and kind of having common expectations. And what have we done with adjusting our network filter to hopefully make it better with the technology? Talked a bit about that. And, you know, we're monitoring a lot with NICEAD and the federal government, standardized assessments, what's happening with 3 through 8 assessments or Regents exams. We're keeping a close eye on that just so we can stay informed. But it was really, we talked about other safety and cleaning protocol. We talked about the walk-up help desk that's opening now. Open house is this Thursday. It'll be launched district-wide, and it's all virtually done, where you can find your children's teachers and click on a link and watch a video specific from each one of them. And so really just, that was it. It was an hour and 15 minutes. Our presentation was about 45 or 50 minutes, and the rest were questions, and we answered all of them. But it was, I know it's been emailed to you as a recording. If there's nothing exciting on TV and you haven't had a chance to watch it, I would recommend giving it a look, because it was, I felt like, very informative, and it's something we'll continue to do, not weekly like we did in the spring, but certainly once every 3 or 4 weeks or more if it's calling for it. But it was a fun evening, and I felt like it was a well done forum. So kudos to Matt and to Vern for their work with that. And if you do watch it and you wonder why we were laughing regularly throughout it, the closed captioning kept referring to Matt, Mr. Shroggy as Mr. Froggy, and Mr. Tenney as Mr. Tony, and it was tough. It was tough to keep a straight face at times, but I guess you have to have some humor, right? The other thing, I have 2 more things. One more thing I want to bring up, and then one thing for a discussion if possible. Let me just grab my paper here. Oh, here it is. So I much prefer doing this in person, of course, but you may or may not have heard that this is Board Appreciation Week. And so every year on Board Appreciation Week, we like to say a few nice things on your behalf, but we're virtual, so forget it. We're just gonna move on. No, I'm kidding. We'll say a few things. So when I think about the board, I think about a number of things right up front. And the first is how student focused all of you are always in your decisions, in your conversation, in your remarks. Everything you do is through a lens of a focus around our students and giving them the best possible experience. And I couldn't be more proud that you do that, because quite frankly, that isn't present in every place, in every school district. But here in Canandaigua, our board focuses on the students, and we are so thankful that you do that. You're also very other focused. And so what I mean by that is when something comes up in our school community with our staff or our students, or even in the greater community, it is normal that I receive multiple emails or text messages from each one of you saying, what can I do to help? Can I do this to help? How can I lend a hand? How can I go and help people in need? You're so incredibly giving, and it is recognized by us, everyone on this meeting right now, our staff and this community, how other focused you are. You're always focused on somebody else. You're selfless in that manner. You're dedicated. So being a board member, Carlin, you may not know this, they get paid a big fat $0 to do this job, nothing. But it is an incredible amount of work. The board packets, my ridiculously lengthy communications, everything we share with you, you read, you know. Sometimes I joke and think they're probably not even reading it. And then you'll email me the most obscure question about something that was in one of those communications, which is impressive. The time and effort you put in is just remarkable. You're so committed to this school and this community. And so I was thinking about a variety of things, but there's this quote by Arthur Ashe, and it says, "I keep sailing on in the middle passage. I'm sailing into the wind and the dark, but I'm doing my best to keep the boat steady and my sails full." And when I think about the board and I think about our current situation with this pandemic, I think you are our steady and you are keeping our sails full. And I thank you for that. So on behalf of the administrative team and Deb and cabinet, we do have gifts for all of you. And we will distribute those to you when you are in district office for another meeting because you're all on different committees and putting all kinds of time into that sort of thing. If we don't see you, then we will do a home delivery in the next few weeks. But we have these gifts for you here to thank you for your time and energy and effort. And also, on behalf of CTA, they've also made and have a gift for you as well. And so I'll explain what it says. There's a thank you card. It says, thank you for helping to carry us through this challenging time. Love, Canandaigua Teachers Association. And it's a canvas bag, and on it are the picture of all of our buildings.
That's awesome.
So they have that for you as well. So we have some goodies for you when we see you next, or we'll deliver them. Thank you.
Thank you to everybody. You know, and I love my colleagues, and I know we all love all of you and doing what we do. This has been a really hard year. And so I think we sort of return the compliment and the gratitude that we feel like everything all of you are doing is also filling our sails and our hearts and making this worthwhile. So thank you to everybody. We really, really appreciate all of you and these very nice gifts and comments. Thanks.
Thanks, Jeannie, and thanks all of you. So the last thing I have is more conversational, and I promise, Carlin, I'm not usually this long-winded. Maybe I am. So when we're looking at our calendar, I shared with all of you on Friday, I wanted to bring up a conversation and just try to hear where you're coming from. Last Monday was Columbus Day. It was a day off. And I think given our school district and our history and our agreement with Canandaigua and everything that goes along with that, one of our main goals is to be a more inclusive and equitable school environment. I think we owe it to at least ourselves and our community to have a conversation around in the future, do we look at keep Columbus Day as is? Do we create a combined Columbus Day and Indigenous Peoples Day and look at it as both? Or do we look at making the shift to Indigenous Peoples Day? In one of the articles I shared with you, it indicated that 14 states have made the shift. 3 states are looking at them as combined. New York is not one of either of those states. I have heard from a few board members. I've heard from a few community members, and I've heard from some administrators, staff, and students wondering, kind of where we stood on this topic. And so for all of those reasons, I think we owe it to at least have a conversation. I've spoken to a couple of you about it already. And at this time, I would like to stop talking and just hear your thoughts and what you believe we ought to consider doing as a school district.
So I'm going to open it up and ask people to share their thoughts. And, by the end, I am going to go around the room to board members. And Carlin, I'd love to hear your thoughts too, and just see how everybody feels about it. So if there's anybody who would like to start, please just put your hand up and I'll call on you. Michelle.
So I am in complete support of changing the day to Indigenous People Day. I've been on record about my concerns even about us being called the Braves. So I think this is a step in the right direction, and am fully supportive.
Thanks. If anyone else doesn't raise their hand, I'm just going to start going around the room. So Julianne, I'm looking at you.
I would support what Michelle said. I think the fact that we're not at least labeling it with both names is problematic at this point. I think we're an educational organization and we are missing out on an educational moment and an educational opportunity. And I think that how we name things says a lot about who we are, and we send messages that way about whose history we value. And I think we need to change that message. I agree that I would prefer that we call it Indigenous Peoples Day. I think it's a much more accurate description of the effect of the history we are commemorating on our community, particularly in this area, but more generally. But at minimum, I would want to see us label it with both. I think to not label it at all as Indigenous Peoples Day at this point is ignoring the history that's associated with European settlement of this area.
Thanks. John?
Well, touchy subject for me. I don't want to change it. Columbus Day, there's a reason New York State is not on that list, because we have an Italian American governor who believes in the Italian American heritage of this state, this region in particular. To say that you're taking Columbus Day away is a slap in the face to every single Italian American in this community, in this school district. It is not Columbus Day, it's an Italian American Day. It's an appreciation day for what people of Italian American heritage have given to this community. To say that it doesn't exist or that indigenous people should be put over and above the Italians, it's wrong. Give them a different day. But Columbus Day is Columbus Day. It's for the Italian Americans in this community, in this state, and in this country. And you'll never see as long as Cuomo's governor. And as long as I'm on this board, I will never support changing it.
Beth? Will you unmute?
I'm sorry, I feel like I've been in a cave. I honestly never made the connection, John, between Columbus Day and Italian Americans. So I don't quite know what to do with that. I guess I have to say right now, I don't know that I have an opinion.
Let's see, Milton?
So first of all, I have to agree with everything that Julianne said. I thought she really summed it up really well with expressing, at minimum, we need to acknowledge in our area the importance of the indigenous peoples. John's point, I would not disregard it. I think John's point is also on the mark. There is a sense of pride in the Italian American community that is represented by Columbus Day, but its history, its settlement, or not its settlement, its association with the 1492. I think we have to acknowledge the indigenous peoples, the effect on the indigenous peoples with the discovery, as it were. Now, if an option exists to co-brand or co-name the day, I think that would be the way to go.
Thank you, Cheryl.
Yeah, after listening to all the conversation, I totally agree with Milton. I do believe that if we have the opportunity to at least co-name it, that we should look to try and do that, because being the land of the brave, it does make sense that we honor both.
Jen?
I'm coming down in a similar place as the last few board members. I think that it is very important that we honor both sides of the issue, and it's got to be, if we're going to do this, more than just a name change. I would like to see us step a little bit more intentionally into some teaching moments around this as to why this conversation even happened and what the history is on both sides of the issue.
Carlin, I don't want to put pressure on you to comment, but if you wanted to participate, you're welcome to.
Say something.
Okay, go ahead.
I agree a lot with what the last few said. I think that some people I know in school feel it's unfair that some things aren't mentioned about it and it's focused more towards one, and some people are saying that it shouldn't be focused more towards on one and things like that. So I agree with how it should be a co-op type thing where both names are mentioned in it, and I definitely agree with the educational standpoint. There should be some teaching from the younger levels up about the reason why we're including both names into it, because I think a lot of people don't realize that there's two sides of that.
So, and I'll add, the discussion is great, and I really value everybody's input. And it's so interesting to me because I'm the daughter of Italian immigrants, and I have no connection to Columbus Day. My pride in being Italian American stems from Festa di San Gennaro and the festivals and the really positive things that celebrate Italian culture. So I value hearing what you said, John, because that was not part of my consideration or feeling at all. But I don't think that the decisions should come from necessarily personal feelings for me. And so I think given the representation that we offer here as board members, perhaps the sort of step into a pretty tricky situation is to co-name them and sort of test that out and see how it is. And I would also echo that our curriculum ought to follow suit also. So my personal preference would be to rename it, but I'm okay with taking a middle path because I think it better represents the board and the board represents the community. And so that may be the right way to do it. Jamie, do you need anything else from us?
I think I get the sense that co-naming it and bringing attention and importance to both is what the board is comfortable supporting. I think I hear that fairly overwhelming. I don't know exactly where John stands still on it though. I don't know if the co-naming piece is palatable to him.
Well, I guess my sense is that the non-co-name piece isn't going to be palatable to a lot of other board members. I don't know if I'm reading the room correctly, but I think, sort of as a middle ground, that's probably a fair amount of compromise on both sides. Does that seem a reasonable statement? I'm looking at colleagues to see if there's enough nodding.
Yes, so these are incredibly hard conversations, but I think I appreciate that our willingness to go into these conversations and have these different vantage points and viewpoints, but be able to, professionally talk about it. And so thank you for that. That is very helpful. So let me wrap my head around where we go next. But that was beneficial. And not that this is totally unrelated, but the ceremony for the Canandaigua Treaty, I believe, and I actually heard this last year, that there was a time that school administration and board members would volunteer and would work or maybe serve food at those events or at that event. Not that I think we'll be having a big gathering this coming year, but it might be something that in the future we might want to consider doing. We do have a pretty positive relationship with Canandaigua, and I think that would just help build it even stronger.
That'd be great.
So that's all I had.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you for the discussion, everybody. Carlin, you can unmute and, if you would, tell us a little bit about yourself and then give us your report, please.
Sounds good. Thank you. Hi, like Mrs. Grimm said, my name is Carlin Bjorling. I'm a senior this year. I do a lot of different things involved with the school. I'm on the lacrosse team. I used to swim. I had to stop because I had surgery last season. But I'm heavily involved in the musical department and in the musical program at the school. So not just sports and not just music. I'm in student government. I do a lot of other things around the school just to help out. And so I'm excited to be here. And I have many other siblings that have been to school as well. I'm the fifth of 7 kids, and all of us have gone to Canandaigua growing up. So I'm pretty familiar with some of the faces here because of my older siblings. But the student report. Everything seems to be going pretty well at the schools. Everyone is, there's no jumping over the moon about how we're handling it, but everyone's happy with what we got. We're just glad whoever is there is happy to be there. I know one concern that I've heard from the gray cohort kids, because I'm in cherry cohort, is that the teachers are only teaching on Monday, Tuesday, and then not teaching on the other days. They're teaching more to the cherry cohort than they are to the gray cohort. I don't know what that is like because I am in the cherry cohort. So I've talked to a few of them, and I think that sometimes the teachers are just giving them busy work. So when they're actually in school in person on those days, that they're just doing busy work instead of getting real instruction from the teachers. And that's what I've heard from the gray cohort on that standpoint. I know our student government, we're doing a school-wide spirit week type thing. We don't usually do that. Usually each student government and each school will decide on what their individual spirit weeks will be like. But we're doing a school-wide one. So all the schools will be doing the same thing except for the Fridays. The Fridays will be different for each one. I know the high school is doing a dress up for Halloween, like a costume thing, but I know that the other schools are deciding what they're going to do and they haven't told us yet. I know the musical program is doing a virtual Prism concert they're going to be recording all of their songs for the concert and putting it on a track and making it available for the whole entire district. And they'll be combining the high school and the middle school concerts together, making it one big one versus the two separate ones. As far as I know, that's what we're doing. Each group will have a song recorded and a picture of the group will be on the screen as it's playing. And then there will also be the transitions that they've done in the past with the solos in between the groups as well, just in a virtual point, which will be really cool, really different. And we're testing that out. I know on the sports side of things, everyone who is allowed to play right now is thoroughly pleased. A lot of people don't get to play. And so a lot of them are pleased that they get to be with their teams and on the field for like soccer and things like that. And on the training standpoint, they're just happy to be there. So for the most part, everyone's really just happy to be back. And I think everyone's kind of getting into the groove of things still. Some little bumps along the way, but they're getting there.
Great. Thank you so much. Really appreciate it. Let's see, minutes for approval. I'll ask for motions, please. Michelle and Beth, questions or comments? All in favor? Opposed? That carries unanimously, Deb. Warrants, John and or Jen, please. John, I think I got a first from John and a second from Jen. Questions or comments? All in favor? Opposed? That carries unanimously too, Deb. And let's see, we have the 2020 capital outlay project. Did Brian or Jamie, did you want to say anything about that ahead of time before I call for motions?
Sure, we were really pleased with how the bids came in on this. We were thinking we're only going to be able to get about half the windows done. And based on where the bids are, we're going to get more than that. We don't know exactly how many past that, but we think we're going to get most of them done.
Okay, great, thank you. Deb, is that a roll call? I didn't make a note, I'm sorry. Roll call, okay.
Yeah.
I'll ask motions, please. Milton and John, questions or comments?
Ryan, do you have a timeline? Do you have a timeline when the work will begin?
I don't off the top of my head. I'll be able to get that to you soon though.
Jen, was your hand up with a question? Okay, so Deb, I'll ask you to call the roll whenever you're ready.
Mrs. Burks, Mr. Johnson,
Yes.
Mrs. Miller, Mrs. Pedzik,
Yes.
Mrs. Personali,
Yes.
Mr. Palomini,
Yes.
Dr. Schneider,
Yes.
Mrs. Thomas,
Is a yes?
Mrs. Grimm.
Yes.
Okay.
Thanks, Deb.
Mhm.
Okay, and serial bond refunding. Matt, did you want to say a couple words about that before I call the vote for that?
Sure. Because interest rates have gone so low, we're able to take this opportunity to refund this bond. It's a very small bond, but by doing so, we'll save about $20,000 per year over the next 7 years. So about $140,000 in savings total.
Fantastic. I'll take motions for that, please. Jen and Beth, questions or comments? Deb, whenever you're ready, please.
Mrs. Burks,
Yes.
Mr. Johnson,
Yes.
Mrs. Miller,
Yes.
Mrs. Pedzik,
Yes.
Mrs. Personali,
Yes.
Mr. Palomini,
Yes.
Dr. Schneider,
Yes.
Mrs. Thomas,
Yes.
Mrs. Grimm.
Yes.
Thanks.
Thank you, Deb, and thank you, Matt. Great work. Always nice to have a little bit of good news interspersed here. Let's see, Matt Schrage, are you presenting the strategic plan update, or Jamie, are you?
It'll be me and a few of the friends that have joined us this evening. So I'm going to start by sharing my screen.
Okay.
So good evening, everyone. We are here to present some updates regarding our strategic plan. As you know, we engaged in a new process last year to identify a strategic plan for the district, in which we established 4 main goals. With those goals, we built a series of action steps, and we try to have those aligned across our different departments as well as buildings. So tonight we're here to share out a little bit of an update about the strategic plan in general, but how the plan itself is being utilized to support the development of SIP plans. So we have our 4 principals and Dr. McFarland here to share out on the CACC. I'm going to start though just by refreshing our memory about the district goals document that was developed last year. You can see we have our vision and mission statement, our core values in relationship to learning, community, and whole child development, and of course our 4 goals of enhancing organizational systems and practices to improve teaching and learning, continuous improvement of district operations, cultivating an equitable and inclusive school environment, and expanding opportunities. So this evening, each one of the buildings is going to share out at least one area and in their building plans that connect to each one of those goals. I'm going to share out a few things at the district level from the Office of Instruction about some activities that are included in our plans for this year that are supportive of the achievement of each one of the 4 goals. And again, as I mentioned, we really want to think about those 4 goals and the plan in general to make sure there is that alignment. So when we think about district goals, we think about building and department and grade level goals, as well as individual learning plan documents that even our administrative team have set their own professional goals against. All of these items are going to kind of filter down into making sure we have consistent goals, values, and metrics, but also that they're all in a similar format. So our SIP plans also have undergone a bit of a reconstruction so that the delivery and the organization of that information is aligned across all of our buildings. So again, these are our goals from last year, but as we also forecasted, we didn't anticipate a significant shift in our district goals. We really recognize that these goals are going to end up being a work in progress over time. And of course, with the unexpected closure of last year, certainly we made some headway in relationship to achieving these goals. But certainly we knew that there was much more work to do. And in fact, the work that we initiated was unexpectedly interrupted. So in a lot of ways, we not only decided to carry over all 4 of these goals as they stood from the previous school year, but also some of our building plans carried over some of those action steps just to be able to see them through or to go into them in more depth in achievement of our 4 district goals. So I'll kick off the update, and then again, I will just ask our principals and Katie to jump in as we'll just go down the different sides of the slides and have each of us kind of talk a little bit about the action step that's listed underneath each one of the 4 goals. So as typical, the Office of Instruction generates its instructional focus areas, and we do want to continue to implement those and revise them from year to year. This document itself is something that is shared with staff on an annual basis, and it's broken down into different categories or focus areas with instruction, professional learning, curriculum review processes, as well as getting into some whole child development pieces. So again, 4 main categories that all connect to our district strategic plan and just really highlight some of the focuses that we're looking at collectively across these key areas. But again, this guiding document is also utilized by our curriculum area lead teachers, grade level leaders, as well as our building principals. So if I go back to the screen here, I'm going to turn things over to Brian and or Emily to talk a little bit about their particular focus area, and then we'll go essentially around the horn to each one of our buildings.
That's great. I think I'm going to start here. Emily and I are kind of making eyes like, am I going or are you going? But I think this slide is mine. You know, just so that everyone on the board is aware, at the primary and elementary school, our SIP team is still a cohesive UPK 5 SIP team. So we really try to create our goals in unison together. So I'll take this slide. I think Emily's got the next couple, and I'll do the 4th goal. But at the primary and elementary school, you know, this has been a challenge for us to start this school year with some students going remote and some students, you know, some students that are completely virtual and some students that are in person. And so we spent a lot of time as a SIP team and just as a school community talking about staying at the same pace with our curriculum and instruction. And as far as reading and math is concerned. And then the other thing that we've been really focusing on is our social emotional learning and how important that is. And so we've been maintaining our social emotional learning with morning meetings and things like that. Morning meetings is a great place for us to build community and have conversations as a school community and build those classroom communities. And then the last thing that kind of fits in here is something that is, we have a few items on our SIP plan that are COVID specific. And so one thing that is COVID specific this school year is our report cards. And so our report card format is changing a little bit this school year. Instead of having, traditionally at the primary and elementary school, we've been working on trimesters where we have 3 report cards in a school year. And this year we're going down to 2. We're going to be reporting at the end of January to families and then also at the end of June. But we feel like it's important for us to maintain even more communication than ever before with families. So in between the semesters, we are going to have a progress report that's going home to families. So those are just a couple of things that are on the docket at the primary and elementary school for this first goal.
And so, you know, the middle schools sort of matches the elementary schools. Our SIP team had a pretty strong conversation about, if I'm only seeing kids 2 days a week, how am I going to deliver 181 days of curriculum? So on Wednesdays, they've been focusing, teachers have been focusing on what's the essential curriculum that's consistent for students. Some teachers are using one model of instruction, some are using another model, but they're trying to make sure that the consistency for the virtual kids matches what the hybrid kids are, and in relation to the kids who are there 4 days a week. So, and the responsive part is trying to get kids to join during office hours, trying to support kids when they're not there in order to support them to do work. So middle school, as you may remember with your kids, is a challenge to get them to do their homework. Now we're giving them most of their work at home. So we're trying to figure out to be responsive to kids. And it's a challenge. I've heard a lot of times, my kid's never going to join office hours. And I tell parents, office hours just needs to be called after school. When we have kids in school, we just keep them. You may or may not know it. Now you're going to have to get them to go on office hours to get that after school tier 1 intervention support. So that's what SIP talked about pretty strongly there. And I think we're finally getting into the initial part of the groove. If you remember your record player, when you put it on that little groove at the beginning and it doesn't play the music yet, that's where we're at. We're hoping the music's going to play in the next 5 weeks.
Okay, at the Academy, I agree with all those things, and we are also trying to create authentic experiences for students who are home, and also students that are hybrid models. But along with that, we felt like it was important to touch on the digital citizenship piece. We've already encountered some experiences with students when they're online, a majority of their educational time this year. We've come across some things, some cheating, some plagiarism, some, things that students may not even realize that they're doing. So we felt that it was important to take time to educate them on things that could help them be productive and good digital citizens. So we have some space in our teaching area this year. So we're hoping to infuse some lessons for the students so that they can be aware and just be better digital citizens as they're learning online.
So at the CACC, a lot of the work that was started last year and work with John LaFave at the helm really focused around social emotional restorative practice. So we're continuing our work with staff around feeling more comfortable in even utilizing restorative circles and utilizing restorative practices in order to keep our kids willing and able and engaged. We spent, we're really fortunate to have the students 4 days a week. And so a lot of our focus really is hitting home on that social emotional, trying to find out where kids are at, how they're feeling, supporting them in every way that we can. We've started to introduce and utilize some mindful practices, not only with staff, but with students, and starting to introduce and make those more common practice within the the realm of the school day, but then also in addition to that, professional learning with the staff on Wednesdays. We're moving a little bit more towards a more interdisciplinary curriculum, more project-based, as we start to focus more intently on our advisory time, which is each morning. And right now we have all of our students in the same room all day. So there's opportunities, at least moving forward this year, for us to do some things in an advisory level that we may not have been able to do before. So we continue to have our weekly professional learning on those focuses, and our students continue to get supported with our staff. And we have our new psychologist, Mr. Brenchley, who's joined us, and he brings a lot to the table too to help work with us and work with the students. So we're looking forward to moving forward with that.
Thank you, everyone. As we transition to goal 2 for continuously improving district operations, I think the biggest piece on this slide in particular with facilities and transportation is, we've heard a lot about to start the school year, is the tremendous amount of work that our staff in both of these departments has had to do in order to prepare for the expectations of having students brought back to school safely. So one of the ways to try to do that is, of course, for those ideas to be implemented effectively but efficiently. And so I know that both Seth and Mike have collaborated with Brian Nolan and with Jamie and with Matt and with Vern Tenney to ensure that everything we're doing in these areas are within the guidance that we're expected to follow, but we're doing so at the highest level possible to ensure student safety. And obviously that piece is paramount to kind of put everyone's mind at ease so that when our students are in school, they're in a safe, healthy learning environment. So I'm going to turn things over again to the primary elementary school to talk about some of their pieces under the second goal.
Thanks, Matt. I'm going to talk about the second goal. And for the primary elementary school, it's really around the use of our learning management systems. So when we began to restructure and we became the primary school and the elementary school, one of our big goals there was to make sure that we have a smooth transition from second grade to third grade. And part of that now is going to be aligning and improving what we now have as Seesaw to using Schoology. So Seesaw is being used right now for UPK to second grade as their new learning management system. And grades 3 through 12 are continuing to use Schoology. So during the extended closure, we were really finding that it was very difficult for the primary students to submit work, receive feedback on work in Schoology because it was not developmentally appropriate. So Seesaw is providing that opportunity for students now. And although, since it's a brand new system, it's especially with everything else that we're managing at the same time, I think it's coming along, and we have been using our Wednesday professional learning time almost every Wednesday to spend some time with training our teachers on how to use Seesaw and how to make sure that we're organizing it, organizing assignments and folders and things in a similar way to how grades 3 through 12 are doing so in Schoology. So I think that's going to be a continued goal. Hopefully we'll have some good progress with that this year. But the hope and the goal is that even after all of the COVID restrictions and changes from this year, that Seesaw will continue to be developmentally appropriate, and that we can support students UPK to 2 in that system, and then successfully transition them to using Schoology for the rest of their time in school in Canandaigua. So it's been going okay so far. We have a lot of learning to do. And I know that both Seesaw and Schoology we've been taking up a lot of time professional development wise, just trying to make sure that we're supporting our teachers with both of those management systems.
So when we developed our SIP plan, it was still before school started, and we were really struggling with trying to figure out how to get kids into the building safely. It turns out when you go from 800 to 300, it's not really a problem. The loops are fine. The kids are coming in. We're sort of managing them for a period of time before all of the advisories are open, and then the kids go to advisory. It's not perfect, but we're hoping we can carry some of these over into when we get back to 800 students, making the 8th grade come in a certain door and 6th and 7th come in certain doors. It really has, I don't know, made it smoother, but there are other operations goals for the middle school, but this was a pretty big one. We spent a lot of time talking about this, and we came up with a plan and published it, and it turned out pretty good. So thank you.
So at the Academy, we are really wanting to focus on refining the RTI process that we have in place currently, response to intervention to students who are struggling academically. I know that when the closure happened, the shift really turned to almost like, you know, when you have like a water bucket and holes are coming and you put your finger to catch that hole and it goes squirting out another hole, and that we were just trying to survive and make sure that we were holding the kids up so that they would get through that closure time. So the process kind of got turned into, how are we helping kids learn remotely, which is important, but I think it's important to delineate between helping the kids survive this closure. Well, it's not closure right now. Just hopefully didn't jinx ourselves, knocks on wood. Helping kids survive this year of remote versus virtual learning, and who's catching people before they fall through the cracks and providing support and resources for them, and a different process where we know a kid is struggling academically and what areas are they having trouble with. Is it reading skills? Is it writing skills? What sort of things can we put in place to help that student and take some data to see if we're really being effective in their learning, but also looking at teachers and their teaching in the classroom in general, and what are we infusing in those teaching practices to help students overall become better in their classroom. So it's kind of like a whole process shift, and we've had a lot of philosophical discussions with the team, which is good, and it's all geared towards helping students in the right way at the right time.
So as a result of just really the understanding and knowledge of practices at the CACC prior to closure, and then obviously having an insight during closure, one of the things that the CACC provides is that constant communication and the ability to allow students to be able to complete most of their work in school. And so there wasn't always a level of understanding, even from staff standpoint, in the use of Schoology as a learning management system. Definitely used Infinite Campus, but on and off sort of use of Brave Square to really increase communication. So we spent the first week of school really as a team, and I'm lucky enough to have intimate knowledge around Schoology and Brave Square, so I felt pretty confident. And then just as on a personal note, as a parent, I knew and understood what parents were seeing. And so I felt like we had a really good opportunity for our staff, especially at CACC, even though we have the kids 4 days a week, to be able to increase the communication, increase their understanding of how to utilize Schoology beyond just assigning work, but to truly use it as a support for students, and the need for it to be very streamlined amongst all of our staff. And again, I'm fortunate to be able to have my science, social studies, math, English teacher, counselor, business teacher have their Schoology pages. We really made a conscious decision to make those very similar, so that students were able to follow things on the days that they're not with us. And in preparation for if we had to go remote in some way, that the students would feel a lot more supported, understand how to use Schoology, understand how to put things in, that our parents understand how to utilize it. And so that communication with parents, really moving them towards less of phone calls home from us and more of, utilizing communication, not just through phone calls with us, but because those are important, but encouraging them to attend Zoom sessions with us, encouraging them to message us through Brave Square. So we've really worked towards getting families to feel a little bit more comfortable utilizing that tool and reaching out for help. So we continue to do that work. The staff continues to work really hard to make that communication increased and make families feel like they can reach out to us at any time utilizing those tools and a real understanding of what those mean and how they can help.
So on the goal number 3 of cultivating an equitable and inclusive school environment, the Office of Instruction continues to engage staff in professional learning and cultural responsiveness and bias. We started that last year under Keith Pedzik and Katie McFarland's leadership to engage us in a document that New York State has put out in relationship to trying to support inclusive and culturally responsive instruction in all districts and in all classrooms. So we've engaged with that document quite a bit during the closure period, but we also have more recently engaged with it during our half conference day earlier in October, just to continue the conversation of trying to help teachers have the most up-to-date information so that when they are thinking about classroom instruction, the resources they're engaging students in, the questions they're asking, the conversations that they're having, that those experiences are in fact void of bias and are culturally responsive as much as possible. It's certainly work that we're just scratching the surface of and more needs to be done. But at the very least, it's an appropriate starting point for us. And not only in relationship to the goal, but to ensure that our instructional practices are essentially keeping up with the times as well. So I'll turn things over to the primary elementary school.
Thanks, Matt. So for the primary elementary school, as we met over the summer as a SIP team, and since on SIP we have a member from every grade level and kind of from every constituent group in the building, it seemed to be kind of an overwhelming focus from people that we were really wanting to know how are our students going to be coming into school this year after being gone from the closure, whether they're virtual or hybrid. What are their stressors? Are they ready to come back and excited to learn? Are they terrified to come to school? We just felt like we really needed to get a gauge for where students are and families as well, and how we can support them. So actually one of my professional goals, my main professional goal this year was really to help facilitate how to gather this information and provide it to teachers and our mental health team so that we can find ways as a school to support our students and families. So we developed as an administrative team and with our mental health team a very brief Google form that went out in our newsletter, and it allowed families, if they wanted to share kind of where their kids are at and coming into school, what their stressors are, what they need support with. We provided some information on our counselor, how they can reach out and get in touch and gain that support. So we had just over 650 responses from the building UPK to 5. And right now we've just kind of finished collecting that, and we're working on getting that information to our teachers and to our mental health team so that we can now kind of develop a plan for our most needy families, and even families who just kind of want to feel like they've been heard and that the school cares about what their needs are, and maybe we can gather that information as a SIP team from the survey and figure out what supports we need to put into place. So that's where we're at with the process right now. And as I said, it's my professional goal this year. So I've been kind of facilitating that. And I think it's great that the SIP team, since we have a representative from every area, they'll be able to chime in and say what's going to be most useful to help support our families.
So this is a little bit more of what I talked about at the beginning. We're trying to work on ways to reach out and find out what supports are needed at home for work accomplishment. And we've been able to set up some, I'm not sure if I should call them remote labs or virtual labs or whatever, but we've been able to assign some of our intervention teachers to periods of support, instruction, and beginning targeted communication. We're not opening that up fully to everybody because we're worried if we just say there's a math teacher available for help. A math teacher can only help kids at home on Zoom at a certain level. So we've been doing what I'm calling at this point, initial foray into remote interventions through some of our intervention teachers. So we're trying to look at this in the long run because we're hoping that, obviously we're going to be in school through January, right, Mr. Farr? But hopefully, if we're not, we'll have a process for the rest of the year as well. So we feel like we've made some progress in this area. We just got our iReady data. As many of you know, we didn't take the end of the year iReady, so we're guessing on who needs what supports and stuff. So I feel like that, it feels like we're only in week 2, but we're really in week 6 because we only see the kids 2 days a week. So progress has been slow. I'll admit that.
So I want to speak about a campaign that a student came to me to try to initiate this year at the Academy. And she's calling it a Respect a Brave campaign. And it came about in this way. She befriended a student who was new to Canandaigua last school year and just got to know that person and realized that some of the people that she would have called friends would say or do things that were disrespectful towards this new student. And when she kind of addressed that to them, that people that she called friends, they were like, well, why does it matter? It's no big deal. And it really affected her. And she came together with a group of students and actually met with 2 national speakers who speak on bullying nationwide, public speakers, and kind of asked for ideas and picked their brain and tried to think of ways to handle it and attack it and see how she could, make a difference in how bullying is looked at here at the Academy. So her start is that she wants to survey the students here, and we're getting ready to send that out to survey the kids to see what they believe bullying is. What do they see? A lot of people may not even recognize it. They think that it's just maybe physical pushing, shoving, but words can be very hurtful as well. What kind of support is there here for students that are having difficulties or situations? And it's kind of turned into a thing where she's rallied up a bunch of students that really want to work together. And once we get this data back, we're going to kind of sit down and look at it as a team and kind of decide next steps from there. But I just wanted to read a line of what the goal is for her that she's thinking. The goal for this group is not only to help spread awareness and stop bullying in our school, but also to find ways to support mental health support to the students in our school who deal with bullying or any other hardships. It's important for me that the students of CA know that they have somewhere to go free of judgment or punishment. So it's kind of like a big full circle thing where the mental health piece, especially this year where students are struggling, and do they have support? Where can they get support and feel not judged if they have to ask for help and support? So this is all student initiated, and I'm very supportive of their goals, and we'll work together to keep this going.
So one kind of ties to the next, that ties to the next, that ties to the last one. So we are, again, we've been really lucky. And in fact, we've had a couple, probably 3 or 4 students return from remote learning, and we were able to accommodate them coming back sooner. And we're pretty excited about being able to offer that opportunity too for our students who were finding that remote was really not doable for them. And so we've continued to work and bring back as many students that have chosen remote, but if they choose to come back, we've been working on that. So definitely trying to meet the needs of the students and their families in order to make sure that their students are getting the most success and being the most successful. I'll go back to what I said in the beginning. We'll continue to embed a lot of restorative practices, but a lot of mindful practices and a lot of ways for students to learn how to work with some strategies at home when they're not with us. So we continue to work on mindfulness, thinking about those restorative practices. And that's really kind of all about the CACC to begin with. It definitely is right off the bat a more inclusive environment. Students feel very much like a family. And in my few short weeks there, the students that have been there definitely feel like a family, and our incoming 8th grade students are definitely developing that family feel too. So we're pretty excited about moving forward.
And so here we are, our final goal of expanding opportunities. So from the Office of Instruction standpoint, we typically engage in curriculum review processes or program processes from year to year. Some of those that are scheduled for this year include World Language Art. Our IB program is a continuation, and ENL also is a continuation. You'll see a note here in relationship to the timing the process might be adjusted. At our CIE meeting last week, there was a recommendation from the council to allow each of our different departments that are in a position where they might be engaging in a program review process to be allowed to have some flexibility in relationship to that timeline. I believe some of our programs that already have the review process underway are going to seek to try to complete those. But from some initial feedback, it does appear that those that were scheduled, like World Language, for example, might give some consideration to delaying their program review process for a year. Part of the reason is just, of course, the current state that we are in, with our attention being heavily focused on trying to make sure what we're currently doing is working well with students. But an important component of our program review process is the ability to collaborate with or go to and visit with other school districts. And so that practice, although important, is probably one that's going to be discouraged or not necessarily welcomed by any participating district. So I think our programs are hoping for that opportunity because there's such valuable information that they gather, and it's a pretty rich experience in which they can go and visit other schools, see how they're delivering instruction or programming in a given area. And currently that just is not an opportunity that we feel like is on the horizon. So that's a component part that's been outlined in our CIE minutes as well, but a piece for the Board of Education to be aware of, that there might be some changes in what would be a typical timeline for some of the program review processes that are due this year. So with a final set of highlights from our different buildings, I'll turn things back over to the primary elementary school.
Hey, and I just want to say the closed captioning is kind of fun to watch, and someone that like myself is easily distracted, it's not a good thing. Michelle, this is just, I wanted you to know when Matt Schrage said Keith Pedzik before, when he said Keith Pedzik before, it said Cayman Islands. So I don't know how that came to be, but it might be something for you to on. But so at the elementary school, in the primary and elementary school, I just kind of wanted to talk about after school clubs and activities for this goal number 4. We really were going into the school year thinking, let's put the brakes on after school clubs and activities. And we actually have been able to start just a few of these in some different ways. So I wanted to highlight a couple of different ways that we're doing some after school clubs and activities that we would normally do. Our student government, Michael McCarthy is our student government leader, and this year he's working with Shauna Carley. And normally they do kind of like one meeting every 2 weeks. This year they're doing 3 meetings every 2 weeks. They're going to meet with the Cherry group, the Gray group, and then a virtual group on Wednesdays to try to bring everybody together, and even our virtual kids. So they're still going to do our student government, which I thought was cool, and going about it in just a little bit of a different way. And you know, one thing that we started last school year and was really successful was our after school mural club. And we just felt like, geez, this mural club, it just can't happen. But you know, Mrs. Austin is our art teacher, and she's thinking of creative ways to engage kids in the virtual learning environment. And these kids have started mural club, and it's going really well, and it's exciting. So we are starting just a few of our after school clubs and activities. And you know, on the slide here, it talks about exploring outdoor learning spaces, and that has happened this school year. It's starting to get a little bit colder though, so we're seeing less and less kids going outside for those outdoor learning spaces. But You know, I know Jamie really was great in getting all those logs set up for kids, and we did have some really great learning spaces, and they still are being utilized, and hopefully we get a few more nice days before snowflakes fly so we can get kids outside. But that's it for the primary elementary school.
Marissa, we got to get some of this 2-for-1 stuff like the primary elementary has.
It's not a bad gig. I'm just gonna say,
No.
I only had to pay attention for 2 slides. The rest of them, I'm just watching closed captioning. So
The key to this SIP goal is actually the second part of it, connect the resources. We added a social worker, and this year, I think you're aware, you certainly signed off on it. We added a specialist who's a mediator from the Center for Dispute Settlement. And what we're trying to get going on there is to connect resources to some of our families in need. I think you've all heard that our clientele is changing. I can tell you it feels like it changed since the end of last year to this year. The needs they're probably not any greater than they were, but they certainly feel that way. So we are developing a list of resources to connect. And as you know, the teaming structure and the Canandaigua Lake teachers, when they see a need, they connect it to a grade level counselor in the grade level office, and everybody goes into action. So we're trying to figure out how to get the resources to work. Just because you lead a horse to water, you can't always get him to drink. And that's part of our challenge this year, because some of the people that need resources, they don't have a car to get them. Some of the resources can't go to homes. One of our goals, and I'm working with the 2 people that I mentioned, is to make sure the stuff happens. It's not enough to just say that this family needs a connection to Finger Lakes Mental Health. It's to make sure that the connection is connected and is ongoing for a period of time so that the child can see a sustained increase in attendance at school or whatever the issue is. Thank you.
As you know, at Canandaigua, tradition is deep and heavy and strong, and it's really important that we continue to create experiences that carry on traditions, even though we can't do them fully the way we want to, or we have done in the past. It is important to us to think of creative ways to continue that and really cultivate a positive school culture and make things fun and traditional and exciting for students here at the Academy. So we have the Spirit Week coming up next week, and I know the seniors are planning to do a drive-in movie, although it might be cold, but we're planning some things. We're getting creative over here, so we will not let you down. And it's important that we continue to offer those for students, for community members, and for the staff here.
So one of the things that we want to do moving forward, and I think part of it I didn't put in here, but even kind of a culture and experience for CACC students. Sometimes it has felt in the past that students kind of come in, come out, leave, you know, for a bit, or may come back or in and out. So we really started to create a culture of this will be your high school experience, rather than we're going to send you here until whatever happens. So trying to focus on having our students realize that this is their high school, that this will be their high school experience for the 4 or 5 years, depending on if they come to us in 8th grade. The other thing is to utilize, and we're starting to sort of lay the foundation. We're not there yet, but we want to utilize the advisory time with our students and some of the other parts of the day when they're all together to think about some career-focused projects, so that our 8th through 10th graders are starting to think more critically about some of the job opportunities or some of the things that they can partake in, and utilizing their strengths that they have to sort of make a career for themselves and really think about a project. So we'll hopefully in the next couple of weeks, with our 8th and 9th grade, we're starting to generate some ideas and some thoughts around a project for the students to engage in. So hopefully we'll have more to share out the next time I see you.
Thank you, Katie, and thank you, everyone. So this brings us to the conclusion of the presentation. So if there are any questions from the members of the Board of Education, we'd be happy to take them at this time.
That was terrifically comprehensive and detailed. Thank you so much, everybody. I learned so much. Let's see, are there any questions from anyone on the board? No. Okay. Well, thank you so much, everybody. Really appreciate it. Can we dismiss our principals? Is that okay? Okay. Good night, you all. Thank you very much for being here.
Thank you.
Yep. All right, back to completing our agenda. Night. Back to completing our agenda. Then we have a consensus agenda. Did we have supplementals? I'm sorry, Deb, I didn't supplemental. Yep. Note of it, and I'll ask for motions, please. Cheryl, Milton, questions or comments? All in favor? Opposed? That carries unanimously, Deb. And let's see, committee reports. Did CIE meet? Who would like to report out on that? Jen, are you reporting? Thank you.
I'll give it a whirl. I think Matt could do a better job. It was a pretty comprehensive meeting. He worked us hard. I think he already mentioned that we have given some flexibility to curriculum teams that would be doing work in starting review processes. We thought there was so much on their plate. We wanted to give them the opportunity to decide when they would come in front of CIE. So some of that may be extended. We also did a preview of the Grants for Excellence, and there was a really complex grouped review of some updates from NICED that we worked through, that I have to admit that as much as I read, I still remain a little concerned about how we can to pull us all of this apart and do some implementation down the road. And Matt, if you'd like to take a minute to explain that much better than I just did, feel free.
I think the only thing I would add is we had about 25 slides from the State Education Department that contained updates, all about changes to standards, implementation timelines, new resources, updated expectations, you name it. And we probably could have spent the entire meeting on trying to unpack that information. But what it tells us is it's kind of a precursor for what our teachers are about to face. You know, right now they're in the midst of, trying to figure out how to do things best, but on the horizon are all these other things that are still going to be expected for us to implement. I think right now we are appropriately trying to keep those from the classroom so teachers can focus on what's most important right now. But at some point we will have to kind of re-engage them and make them more aware of and prepared for standards changes, new standards altogether, and expectations that are going to impact teaching and learning in the classroom. So we'll get there when we are ready, but there will be much work to do.
Thank you. Let's see, safety, John?
I didn't attend. I was at work. I don't know if Brian has anything to add.
Okay. Thank you, Brian. Did you want to report out? You'll have to unmute. Thanks.
That's actually Vern now for that.
Okay. So I guess we'll just skip that one unless anybody else was there that wants to report out. Okay. How about COVID-19? Jen, please.
I also will leave this open in case Brian wants to add anything. Some major items is some deployment of some filtration technology units in some specific spaces. We've gotten delivery of some GIR silicone masks in that'll give us some flexibility in some of our teaching capacities and potentially with some athletics that I'm pretty excited about. I happen to personally like this PPE, so I think this is a nice step forward. And finally, the big highlight of the whole thing is Mike has started collecting carbon dioxide data from different classrooms. This is the team being a little geeky, I'm going to admit this, but we're going to track that data because carbon dioxide is a really good signal for how much shared air is in a room. And whether that shared air is just air or it has some viral particles in it, it's a good signal. And so by doing that, we can track the amount of shared air, if you will, across classrooms. And we're building a spreadsheet that we're reviewing. So some of the initial data was pretty interesting, and I was happily surprised in a lot of our spaces, I will say.
Are we doing this because we want to, or is this a required element?
This is
We
entirely
are above and beyond.
above and beyond because that's what we do.
Awesome. Thank you.
And yeah, I'd just like to add that, thanks to Jen's input to lead us down that path. And as she said, there were some really interesting markers on that first measurement. And, we actually had a meeting today with a group that talked about windows being open. And I was able to share, the difference in that carbon dioxide in the rooms that didn't have the windows open versus the rooms that did. And it's getting harder and harder to keep those windows open because of the weather. But, even if it's cracked a little bit or the best they can do is it really could be important.
Great. Thank you. Julianne, Fort County, please.
Yeah, so the legislative committee met this past Saturday and debated a number of different priorities for the year, eventually settling on funding and equity as the two topics to focus on. With funding, particularly looking at transparency, looking at predictability of funding as we all try to budget for the year. And in terms of equity, the conversation started with looking at equitable access to technology and the tools that are needed for remote learning, but really starting to interpret that more broadly in terms of thinking about the needs of our student population as a whole and the way that not just COVID, but the educational environment in general is playing out for them. The other thing the committee talked about was to start thinking more broadly about how to implement the legislative agenda, that it's not enough to simply write statements and sort of send them out into the ether, but how to work collaboratively with possibly teachers unions, other organizations, superintendents organizations to try to increase the amount of influence that we might have and to also think strategically about how to communicate some of these goals.
Great. Thank you. Jamie, anything else or anyone else for the greater good? Deb?
We need to vote on the policies.
Yes, I'm so sorry. Thank you for the reminder. Yes. Okay. Beth, did you want to talk about them at all?
Well, on behalf of the committee, I would make a motion that we accept for a second reading. 3 policies, 1095, 2030, and 5090.
Okay, and as that's on behalf of the committee, it doesn't need a second. Are there any questions or comments? All in favor? Opposed? That carries unanimously. Thanks for the reminder, Deb. Anything else now? Did I miss anything else? Okay, Jamie, all set?
I'm all set. Thank you.
Great. Keep up the good work, everybody. Stay safe. Bye-bye. Oh, I'll ask for motions to adjourn. That would help, wouldn't it? Michelle and Milton. Thank you. I think we're done now. Okay. Bye.
I saved it, Deb. Yep. I think we're good.
Thank you.
Yep. Have a great night.
You too. Bye.